It's not 10. Maybe
Okay.
maybe 12 inches of a tail. I call it a tail.
Mm-hmm.
And then you make a slip knot. Let me show you how to do that. So you make another loop and you push the yarn between the two sides of the loop and pull it, and then you get this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then you put the loop onto one of the needles. And you leave the tail on the front, and the other yarn goes to the knitting ball of yarn. Okay, then you take, are you getting this okay?
I am. Mm-hmm.
Okay, then you take your other needle and you put it from front to back through the loop that you've already put on needle 1. And then you pull it over around the stem of the second needle.
Mm-hmm.
And then you twist the stitch that's on the top needle. You turn it to the other side and put your needle in there. And then you put it back on the first needle. And you do likewise for, how many stitches would you like? About 30?
That sounds good.
Okay.
This is just a learn to cast on video,
Yeah.
courtesy of Jean Clarkson, knitting expert.
Yes.
How long have you been knitting?
Oh, I learned in college, I think. There's 5 stitches. I think I'll do at least 20. That way you get to see it repetitively.
So you don't even have to take the needle out.
No, I just slide it up and down on the needle number 2. And I think it's easier to knit with wooden knitting needles than metal, because they're not as slippery as the metal is. Another thing is, with your third finger on the left hand, you can kind of hold the tail so it doesn't get in the way, because then that might confuse you about which yarn strand you're working on with. Okay? You could use a thicker yarn for this too, because these needles are big. I probably don't knit anything bigger on bigger needles than these. And the first finger on your right hand you use to keep the tension on the left needle. And you can slide it back and forth as you go. You see how I go up and down like this? So you don't need to take either hand off the needle. So it's a very smooth process if you do it carefully. Okay, let's see how many we got. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. Okay.
Can we do 30?
I'll do, yeah, I'm going to make more.
Okay.
Okay. I think that's 14. 16, I think. This is really thin yarn.
You're doing great with it. I know it's not an ideal weight, and
yeah,
the needles aren't wooden, but
yeah. I think the wooden needles are better because they provide the yarn with some, what's the word? I was going to say stability, but I don't think that's quite right. Okay, you take 2 needles with your thumb, then you take, what are these? Stitches. 2 stitches, and then you put your thumbnail between the second and third stitch, and then you take the next 2 stitches with your second, no, that's your first finger after the thumb. And then you do the next 2, this is for counting purposes. Okay, I think I've got 4 left. 2, 4. Now, let me see. I'm going to count it again, make sure I'm right. Because if you don't cast on the appropriate number of stitches, you're going to be stuck later because you have to maintain the same number of stitches. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Good. All right, now we're going to say that all you need is 20 stitches. Okay, now I'm going to start to knit. So I've got the left hand holding on to the first and second needle with my thumb and first finger. And this needle on the right side, you can kind of keep it from coming too close to you by putting your 4th finger nail on the needle. You got that picture? Okay. And then you bring the yarn around between the 2 needles and you have another stitch. So you can continue to do that until you have however many stitches you're supposed to have, or if you want to. So really your activity is from the wrists down on both hands, and the rest of your arm really doesn't need to move. See, I keep this fairly close to my body. It's easier that way because I can see it. If I held it out here, then it's harder to see. So you really I've got my elbows at my waist and my hands about this distance from my body. Okay?
Yes.
All right. Now I'm going to knit.
You're starting a row?
Yes. Okay, there's 1 stitch. I put the needle under the loop, into the loop on the bottom side of the stitch. And then I wrap the yarn. I let go of the knitting needle on the right hand. I let go, and then this is probably more than you need to know at the moment.
I think it's neat.
Oh, okay. And then you take your yarn with your first finger and your thumb, and I'm holding this. Can you see the way I've got it looped around my little finger?
Oh.
And then I take the yarn with my first finger and I encircle the needle, and then I can push it up with my left hand and transfer it over to the right needle. And then that's what I do for all the rest of the stitches. And you should try to keep the stitches at about the same tension. Can you see that there? Okay. And there's another one. That's 4 stitches. And I can keep moving the end of the knitted part on the left needle with my little hand. I mean, my little finger. I'm getting confused. Oh dear. Okay, whoop, that one slipped out. There's another stitch. And then you just kind of slide the knitted stitch that you started with over to the other needle. Twist. What's making that noise?
The bag fell over.
Oh, okay. And you can move these stitches down on the other needle with your right hand. I'm assuming this is for a right-handed person. I don't know how to knit left-handed, and I don't know if there are knitters who knit left-handed, but I suppose there probably are. I just don't know any of them. If I meet a left-handed knitter, I'm going to ask them some questions. Okay, now you can see how stretched out these knitting
The stitches?
the stitches are, oh, what do you say, about 1/4 of an inch apart?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Well, usually my stitches are closer together than that, but I'm using a very thin yarn here
And very big needles.
and big needles, so this is not a very good example.
This is for educational purposes
Yeah.
only.
Right. Yes, there's no guaranteed thing at the bottom of the page. I'm sure if you looked at YouTube, you could find some examples of people doing this under more realistic circumstances. I think my stitches are getting bigger. I'm relaxing now. Whoop, there. Okay, that one landed on the side in the right place, so I'll leave it there. Now you can see here, I'm helping to take the stitch off of the left needle with my thumb. So I can do it like that. And again. So it's a lot of very close working of the yarn with both hands together, pretty much. Okay, that's the end of the first row. Now we can stretch it out and see all the stitches. All right, now.
Ooh la la.
Okay, now we take the yarn and we move the needle. Okay. Now it looks like this. Okay, I'm putting the needle under the first stitch in this row. So this is row 2.
This is the same stitch?
Yeah. So I'm doing the first stitch over again. These are so slippery. Where did my stitch go? Oh. I should be doing this with wooden needles. It'd be easier to see. All right, now we got it going. Now I'm slipping the needle under the third stitch here. You put the point of the right-handed needle into the stitch next on line here, and then you wrap the yarn around the right hand needle and then pull it off. And now we do the rest of the row that way. So it's under, around, and off. Under, around, and off. Under, around, and off. Run under. Whoop. What's the problem here? Under, around. Oh, look what I've done. I've been knitting with the wrong strand. Wait a minute. How did I do that? How did that happen? I've made a mistake. Let's see if we can figure out why.
Ooh.
Or what happened. I must have picked up the wrong end of the yarn. So.
And how are you backtracking right now?
Oh, well, I put the right needle next to a stitch, and then with my left first finger, I kind of push the stitch off onto the other needle again. Did you get that? Okay. So, what am I doing now? I'm going back up. Okay, now I've only got 2 stitches on the right-handed needle. So I'm going to go with the point of the right-hand needle under the red needle on the left and knit a stitch. And here's another one. Put my needle on top of the red needle on the left hand. I run the needle underneath the left needle and pull it out. So you can see, oh, I'm still using the wrong yarn. How could I have done that? Okay, well, well, I hope after several more tries that I'll get it right. Because I'm going to run out of yarn here pretty quickly. Oh dear. All right, that's it for now. I'll try tomorrow with a better example.
Equipment?
Yeah, right. Better equipment. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed my description of knitting on a pair of very fat needles with very thin yarn, which is not the ideal. The pattern will tell you, if you want to make something following a pattern, it'll tell you what size needles you need, and it will also recommend a certain kind of yarn. And it may depend on who's publishing it, what kind of yarn gets talked about, because of course they want you to buy their yarn.
That makes sense.
Okay?
Okay.
So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And maybe tomorrow night we'll give you another lesson.
Okay.
Hope you enjoyed it. Happy knitting.